I didn't want to rush this video because I wanted to find stories that actually stuck with the people who lived through them. These aren't rumors and they're not urban legends. Every one of these actually happened. These are 3 true school lockdown stories, and the last one still messes with me to this day. Story 1, the man in the hallway. It was the last class of the day, 7th period, and honestly, nobody in the room was paying attention anymore. It was a Friday afternoon, early March, and spring break was only a week away. I was sitting in the back row of my sophomore math class, pretending to listen while counting the minutes until the final bell. The room smelled faintly like dry erase markers and old carpet, and the rain tapping against the windows made the whole place feel slower than usual. We didn't have a quiz that day, which was rare. Our teacher was one of those relaxed types, the kind that let things slide as long as nobody caused problems. About halfway through class, he gave up on the lesson entirely and pulled up a trivia game on the projector. Nothing serious, just something to kill time. People started whispering. A few kids laughed. For a moment, school felt normal, almost comfortable. Then the intercom clicked on. At first, there was just static, that sharp popping sound that usually meant an announcement was coming. Nobody paid attention right away until the vice principal's voice came through. He sounded wrong. His voice was shaky, rushed, like he was trying to read something while running out of breath. He said, "This is not a drill. All teachers initiate lockdown procedures immediately." The room went completely silent. I remember the exact feeling. My stomach dropped, and my arms broke out in goosebumps. Our teacher froze for half a second, then his whole demeanor changed. The laid-back smile vanished. He rushed to the door, locked it, shut off the lights, and waved us toward the back corner of the room. No one complained. We crouched on the floor behind overturned desks, packed together so tightly I could feel the guy next to me shaking. The only sound was breathing, slow, forced breathing, as everyone tried not to panic. About 2 minutes later, the low electrical hum from the walls suddenly stopped. The power had been cut. That's when it hit me that this wasn't just serious. Something was very wrong. A few minutes passed, maybe 5, maybe 10. Time didn't make sense anymore. Then we heard it, a scream, not a yell, not someone calling out, a full-throated, unhinged scream echoing down the hallway. 2 girls near the front of the room immediately started crying, trying to cover their mouths with their hands. The screaming got louder, closer. Then we heard banging, metallic crashing sounds as someone slammed into lockers while shouting incoherently. Then the words became clear. "I'll kill all of you!" My heart was pounding so hard I was convinced the sound alone would give us away. Our teacher put a finger to his lips, his face pale, his eyes wide. The footsteps stopped right outside our classroom. The banging shifted from the lockers to our door. The door rattled violently in its frame as whoever it was started pounding on it with both hands. Someone screamed, "Open up!" over and over again, his voice cracking with rage. One of the girls sobbed loudly and screamed, "No!" And I was sure that was it, that the door would give way. But after what felt like an eternity, the banging stopped. The footsteps moved on. The screaming faded down the hallway until there was nothing left but silence. We stayed exactly where we were, frozen for a long time. Eventually, the intercom came back on. The vice principal explained that an unstable man had entered the school, assaulted the front desk secretary, and fled into the building. They didn't know if he was armed. Security searched the school but couldn't find him. Classes were told to resume, but doors had to stay locked. Nobody was allowed to leave. Later that evening, rumors spread. A night janitor supposedly found the man asleep inside a storage closet on the far end of the school. According to what people said, there was a handgun tucked into his jacket pocket. By the time police arrived, he was gone. To this day, I've never found out who that man was or if he was ever caught. But sometimes when I hear loud footsteps in an empty hallway, I still think about how close he came to getting through that door. Story 2, the man across the street. The second lockdown I remember happened during lunch, which somehow made it even more confusing. My middle school had 2 lunch periods. The first was for 6th graders and part of the 7th grade. The second was for the rest of the 7th graders and all the 8th graders. That day, I was in the second lunch. It was early October. The sky was gray, heavy with clouds, and a steady drizzle had been falling since morning. Most of us were standing outside, half awake, half annoyed, waiting in line for food. That's when we heard it. 4 loud booms. At first, I honestly thought it was thunder. Nobody really reacts to thunder where I grew up. But suddenly, the entire lunch crowd started screaming. Trays clattered onto the ground. People pushed past each other, trying to run. Before I could even process what was happening, campus security burst through the doors, yelling at everyone to get inside immediately. Anyone holding food was forced to throw it away and move. No explanations, just shouting and urgency. We were herded into the multi-purpose room along with a massive group of students. The room was huge, with a high ceiling and a long back wall made entirely of glass that faced the street. As soon as we got inside, adults rushed to pull the curtains closed over the windows. I noticed staff members standing at every exit, arms crossed, watching us closely. That's when it stopped feeling like a drill. My friend Eric leaned over and whispered that he'd ask what was going on. He walked up to one of the teachers and came back a minute later, looking pale. He told us there were houses directly across the street from the school. Apparently, a man had barricaded himself inside one of them, threatening to kill himself and any police officers who tried to approach. What made it worse was that multiple people had seen him earlier, walking back and forth along the fence line, staring at the students during lunch. Close enough that I could tell exactly where he was standing. As if that wasn't enough, Eric lowered his voice and added that the man was a registered sex offender. We stayed locked inside the multi-purpose room for over an hour. 2 full class periods passed while we sat on the floor, whispering, checking our phones, and watching the adults pretend everything was fine. Eventually, police resolved the situation. We were escorted back to our classrooms, one group at a time. I thought that was the end of it. It wasn't. Later that week, my friend Brandy told me something she'd never mentioned before. She lived next door to that man. She said that the previous Halloween, she saw him standing in his front window late at night. He was cutting his arm and smearing the blood across the glass. Then he wrote a message, "Don't come here or I'll kill you." At the time, everyone assumed it was just a messed up Halloween display, a bad joke, something meant to scare kids. But after the lockdown, after learning who that man really was, we realized how close he had been to the school and how easily things could have gone very differently. Even now, whenever I pass that street, I still glance at those houses. And I'm grateful that lockdown day ended with us walking back to class instead of running for our lives. Story 3. He was hiding with me. The third lockdown didn't happen when I was a student. It happened years later, when I thought I was finally safe inside that building. I was 22 years old, fresh out of college, when I got a job at my old high school. It wasn't a teaching position, just a temporary computer intern job in the school's basement. The basement was nothing like the rest of the school. It was cluttered, poorly lit, and smelled like dust and old electronics. But tucked away down there was a small office shared by 3 people. It was surprisingly comfortable. Big desks, mini fridges, a flat-screen TV mounted on the wall, and air conditioning, something the rest of the school definitely didn't have. I got the job because 3 of my former computer teachers genuinely liked me. They weren't just teachers anymore. They felt like friends, and they helped me land the position. Everything was fine, until a few weeks in. That afternoon, my 2 co-workers, Dave and Gary, were upstairs handling paperwork. I was alone in the basement, eating a sandwich during my lunch break, when my phone rang. It was a woman from the front office. Her voice was tight, controlled, too controlled. She told me the school was on lockdown. Someone had entered the building and might be armed. The call ended before I could ask anything else. I looked around the office, and that's when I realized how exposed I was. The office didn't have a door, just a wide opening. Even worse, the door that separated the basement from the rest of the school didn't have a working lock. All I could do was turn off the lights. I shut down my computer monitor and sat there in complete darkness, texting Dave and Gary over and over. No response. For about 20 minutes, I sat there in silence, scrolling mindlessly on my phone, trying to convince myself that I was overreacting. I couldn't hear anything from upstairs. Then the basement door creaked open. The sound echoed down the stairwell, loud and slow. Footsteps followed, heavy, fast. Someone was running down the stairs. I slid out of my chair and crawled under my desk, holding my breath. A figure entered the office. They didn't turn on the lights. They just stood there. The silence was unbearable. I was certain that if I made a single sound, I would die right there under that desk. My phone vibrated. The sound felt deafening in the darkness. Before I could stop myself, I panicked. I crawled out, stood up, and begged whoever it was not to hurt me. A hand grabbed my arm and pulled me upright. It was a man wearing a red plaid shirt, jeans, and a dark red cap. He told me it was okay, that he was just hiding too. I whispered, asking what was going on upstairs. He ignored the question. Instead, he asked if there was another exit down there. I pointed toward the basement door and asked who he was. There was a pause. Then he said he was there to pick up his son and that a teacher told him to hide because of the lockdown. Something felt off. I glanced down at my phone and finally read the text that had come in. It was from Dave. It said, "This is insane. Some guy with a gun just shot Mr. Buckley. He's wearing a red shirt and a red hat. Whatever you do, don't come upstairs." My blood went cold. I slowly looked back up at the man in front of me. He was staring at me now, really staring. I realized he knew. I didn't say a word. I just turned and ran. A gunshot exploded behind me, echoing through the basement. I heard the bullet slam into metal as I sprinted up the stairs, my legs barely working. At the top, police officers were already waiting. They arrested the man the moment he tried to exit the basement. Mr. Buckley survived the shooting. I never learned why that man targeted him. Nobody ever explained it. All I know is that sometimes, when my phone vibrates unexpectedly in a quiet room, I'm right back under that desk, waiting in the dark. Lockdowns are supposed to keep people safe, but sometimes they just trap you in the same building as the danger. I don't know where those people are today, but I know one thing for sure. The sound of a locked door still makes my stomach drop.